Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. Will today be the day that Trump gets indicted? Some indicators pointing in both directions.
Yes.
So we'll break all of that down for you, as well as a little bit of the process of just how exactly this is all going to work. Is he going to be handcuffed? Is he not going to be handcuffed? What will this all look like? Also, Ron DeSantis finally breaking his silence about the imminent Trump indictment, kind of making things worse for himself in a way, I think. Really kind of satisfied.
I think so. We'll let you guys know.
We'll let you decide. We'll play the comments and you guys can see what you think. France really on the brink today after Macron's government barely surviving a vote of no confidence. The people, 75% of France completely outraged about his quote-unquote pension reform, changing the retirement age from 62 to 64 in a very undemocratic fashion as well. So we'll tell you all about that. Some press room chaos yesterday that Saagar was particularly interested in.
Oh, yeah.
Mainstream reporters rushing to the defense of Karine Jean-Pierre, lest one of their colleagues get out of line and lack proper decorum within the press briefing setting. So we've got that video for you. Also, PBS did a little documentary following around Dr. Fauci as he was trying to persuade people to go out and get vaxxed. And there was quite an interesting interaction that got a lot of people's attention. We will show you that as well. We also are happy to have Dr. Trita Parsi in studio with us today to talk about the event we're doing together. Remember, it's 20 years of the Iraq War, how exactly the media failed us and what, if anything, did they learn from that. And he also wanted to talk a little bit about in connection with Iraq and the media not really learning their lessons, the way the Ukraine war has been covered and the role that the U.S. has just recently played that we covered yesterday in blocking any potential ceasefire if it is suggested by China. Before we get to any of that, though, Spotify video.
That's right. Thank you very much to our premium members who've been signing up for Spotify and have been using their premium feed to get the full show and audio. I know a lot of you guys have really been enjoying it. So just a reminder, breakingpoints.com if you want to become a premium member and you get the full video and the audio. So I know that a lot of you have been using that. It's been really fun to see the numbers. We are one of the biggest gated podcasts on Spotify, I'm told. So thank you all very much. Shout out to you guys.
Yep.
There we go.
Absolutely. Breakingpoints.com to become a premium subscriber so you can take advantage of Spotify video. All right, let's get to the big story of the day. Will he or won't he be indicted? I'm, of course, talking about Donald Trump. Manhattan DA looks like imminently they are going to arrest and charge Trump with something related to the whole Stormy Daniels hush money payment situation. As we broke down yesterday, it's really sort of a combination of two pieces here. There's outright business fraud of recording the payment as something that it wasn't really on the books. And then the way that they get it from being a misdemeanor to potentially a felony, and this is all, speculative until we actually see what the charges are, but the way they get it to a felony is by arguing this was in service of another crime, which was a campaign finance violation. The argument here, the theory here is that Trump's campaign, as he was running for president, this is way back in 2016, got a huge benefit from these hush money payments. This was, of course, not recorded in terms of their books, and it would have been a contribution over the limit if it had been. Okay, so that is the legal theory of the case. We have some contradictory indications this morning about the timing of this potential indictment. Everybody seems to think it continues to be imminent could be today, could be the next coming days, could potentially be next week, but I think this is coming sooner rather than later. The first one is that all NYPD officers, including plainclothes detectives, have actually been ordered to wear their full uniform today, starting at 7 a.m. ahead of a possible indictment. This is from a CBS News reporter, so that's one piece. Okay, maybe this is coming today. On the other hand, Robert Costa also with CBS News. I thought he was with the Washington Post. I guess he moved a while ago.
Yeah, he moved on.
Anyway, Trump's team did not hear from prosecutors this evening. That was last night, according to Susan Nichols, an indication that no indictment was made today. So is it going to happen today? Is it going to happen tomorrow? Is it going to happen a few days from now? Nobody really knows. We have some additional reporting I'll get to in a moment. But let's go ahead and put our first element up on the screen from the New York Times about what this would all look like. The headline here is New York authorities prepare for unprecedented arrest of an ex-president. Ahead of a likely indictment, law enforcement officials are making security plans as some of Donald Trump's supporters signal that they intend to protest. More on that in a moment. They talk about in this article, Trump would be fingerprinted. He would be photographed. He could even be handcuffed. If he is indicted by a Manhattan grand jury in the days ahead for his role in hush money payment to a porn star, the former president of the United States will be read the standard Miranda warning. He'll be told he has the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. In the wake of Mr. Trump's public call for action, there were some scattered signs his followers were planning to protest on his behalf. So far, that hasn't really amounted to a whole lot. But we'll see, if it scales up. And in terms of whether or not he'll be handcuffed, that's sort of like, they can make that decision. They could handcuff him behind his back. Sometimes white collar defendants, they say, are handcuffed in front of them. And they could also make the decision just not to do that whatsoever. It is expected, this has been reported out, that Trump will surrender himself. So, that makes moot some of the point of whether they would have to force an extradition from Florida or something insane like that. But listen, with this dude, you just never know what he's going to decide to do in the moment.
Yeah, we have no idea how any of this is going to go down. And the preparations, though, is that clearly New York authorities are preparing for the worst. We had some video actually from the scene yesterday. Yeah, as you can see there, this is the NYPD unloading barricades to surround the district attorney's office, the courthouse, and elsewhere. Couple that, I think, Krystal, with the report that you read this morning about the NYPD officers being told to dress in full uniform. They're expecting quite a bit of protesters, but said protesters have not yet materialized, so we don't yet know what's happening.
Yes, yeah. That is correct. We also have, go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen, just some additional reporting about potential timing here. This is from Politico. They say that Trump indictment could land soon, sending law enforcement scrambling. A grand jury is expected to charge Trump within days, according to 3 people involved in the deliberations. Now, according to Politico, they say an indictment by a grand jury is expected late Monday or Wednesday. Well, Monday passed. There was no indictment, so perhaps it will happen Wednesday. This is according to 3 people involved in the deliberations. There was one final person who apparently was scheduled to testify before the grand jury Monday afternoon. There was an expectation that Michael Cohen then might be brought back to rebut that witness, but that apparently didn't happen. I think all of this, Saagar, and why we wanted to cover it is just to underscore, even though the details of this case have been hashed over again and again, it really feels like old news. The specter of a former president being indicted is, it's historic. This is a first in history. It's a remarkable, unbelievable moment. And, to see how this all unfolds and to think about, okay, they're considering whether or not to handcuff him, and he's going to be read his Miranda rights, and he's going to be fingerprinted, to me really brought home the kind of gravity and seriousness of the situation.
I'm glad you said that, because we have to be able to separate out. And I think we both have said, we're like, look, on the merits, it looks like a weaker case. Politically, I think kind of a disaster to be, this is really the one that you want to go with. We're talking about bookkeeping fraud with a very extraordinary interpretation of the law. Good luck. We'll see how that actually works out before a judge. Let's put that aside. Just the act of simply arresting the former president is something that we have gone out of our way to avoid here in the United States for literally hundreds of years, especially going back to Andrew Johnson, and then, of course, the Nixon administration, whenever we think about Gerald Ford's, at the time, unpopular decision to basically pardon Nixon for all crimes and to prevent the Justice Department from ever trying to indict even a current president. A lot of these norms and all these things were set in place, even though, look, they don't pass the smell test in terms of, yes, technically he's a private citizen, but he's an active candidate, and he's a former president, and he has a large constituency. So it's an extraordinary act regardless of what it is. So we have no choice but to get into the nitty-gritty of the bookkeeping fraud, of the exact nature of the payment, of whether Michael Cohen was charged or called before the grand jury or not. I found that a little bit interesting. I'm curious your interpretation. The fact was that he made himself available to the grand jury for 2 hours. They did not end up calling him, which means, I guess to me, currently, that they will not be pursuing in any way the campaign finance allegation, even with respect to the way that it would relate to the bookkeeping fraud that is there. At least that's a legal interpretation that I also saw that was out there. Because if they had, that would have been materially important to the cover-up, so to speak. But we also know that other members of the Trump organization have been cooperating with federal authorities and myriad other legal cases on top of tax fraud and others. So it's possible that they also, their testimony may be material to this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely don't know. My understanding was that the witness who had been called before, who once advised Michael Cohen, who was also a lawyer, this guy, Robert Costello is his name, he was brought in to kind of call Michael Cohen's character in question, which I don't think is a particularly difficult thing to do, given that he served jail time for some of these same, similar charges. So anyway, I think the idea was Michael Cohen could then come back in and sort of reestablish himself as a credible character, was my understanding. But, it's very hard to know from the outside what exactly is going on here and why the decision was made to not bring Michael Cohen back in. Perhaps they just felt that they didn't need him in order to secure the indictments that they are looking for. With regards to the protests, you'll recall in the infamous Truth Social Truth post where Trump said, he expected to be indicted on Tuesday, and the very last part of that called on his supporters to come out and protest and, quote, take America back, I think was the language that he used. There was a lot of concern that, you could have a real sort of, violent protest, large-scale protest. Could still happen. So far, it has not. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. So this is Ben Collins. He says he's at the pro-Trump protest put on by the New York Young Republicans Club. Not a joke. There are more reporters here than Trump supporters. This was supposed to be the big one. And Saagar and I were both joking about how many of those so-called protesters are actually feds. I think is also a reasonable question to ask.
I think you take out the take out the feds, and there's maybe like one guy in the entire crowd. Just saying.
President of the New York Republican Club is there. That's it.
Okay. Well, according to Ben, also he said it's just a bunch of cameras taking picture of a guy who's putting on a rat suit next to a guitar with the words "Hang Fauci" on it, and this was supposed to start a half hour ago.
Sounds about right.
Look, we have no idea how it's going to go. It's also possible that many Trump supporters, even though they may be outraged, having seen the events of January 6th, are like, well, maybe we won't be going for. At the same time, look, he also hasn't actually been indicted yet, so this not technically something to protest. Now, you should hang on to those words because that's kind of the excuse that a lot of people who are defending Ron DeSantis are using. But I think that there's something materially different about a GOP leader and then somebody actually coming out to protest something based on the reaction. Look, we have no idea, right? I do not think, though, that people should read it as some sort of acquiescence by the Republican base. You can be outraged about something and not technically, necessarily take to the streets, especially after what happened on January 6th. So I don't think people should read it as him losing his power, although, it is certainly a noteworthy event. And ultimately, we can't really make that call until well after whatever happens with this indictment, and then even, how the judge will handle it if there is even a trial or, prison or any of these other things that we have to speculate on. It's just, I think it's too early to say it. I just do think it is humorous, though, that the media also, the number of cameras there shows you, like, they want this to be a thing. They're like, oh, we got to get everybody down there. There's going to be such a massive story. And they show up, and it's kind of like that other rally that we covered here where, it was supposedly some big right-wing protest, and all that really came out of it is it seemed like there were a bunch of feds that were there undercover, marching around, and clearly, like, the most like telltale haircut than anybody had ever seen.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Right.
Some of the reporting suggests that actually some Republicans were concerned that the protests could be basically a trap. There's a lot of concern about what exactly, might have unfolded if they did show up. So that may be part of why so far there hasn't been much to emerge. There's also just like the logistical challenge of this all happened really quickly. Whereas with January 6th, there was a long time to sort of like for the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys to get their plans together and gather their weapons and plan, their hotel rooms and all that stuff. So anyway, I don't want to say nothing's going to happen, but so far, the protests that have been planned have not amounted to much, if anything.
Yeah, I think that's where we'll leave it. So we have no idea. We have indications on many sides. The fact that he wasn't notified until last night means it may not come this morning, but it could come tonight. It could be one of those that is a major breaking event. So we'll see what happens.
We'll be watching
as I
closely.
said, as Trump always used to like to say when he was president.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.